Hi guys, I'm Vicky, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another makeup through the decades video. And I think it's been about a week since I've posted one of these videos, but today it's time for the 90s and this is my decade. I'm a 90s baby. I was very nearly an 80s baby, 3 days earlier and I would have been, but I was born in the 90s and I've got my 90s baby t-shirt on today to fit the whole theme. I've even had my hair cut as well, and this is kind of 90s, a 90s sort of bob. Now when I think of the makeup in the 90s, I think of brown. Brown eyes, brown lips, dark brown eyebrows, so that is the type of look I'm going to be going for in today's video. So let's just get straight into it. Gonna prime it with my Trinny BFF Cream. 2 pumps of that. For foundation, I'm going to use my Estee Lauder Double Wear. I did use this in my 1950s video as well. And I'm in the shade Ecru. So with foundation in the 90s, when I was doing my research, it said that foundation had kind of come a long way in the 90s and people were now able to match their foundation to their skin tone, which sounds so bizarre. Because, you know, we do that fairly easily, I guess, nowadays, even though some brands still have a way to go with that. And the look was matte, so that's why I'm using my Estee Lauder Double Wear. But it didn't say anything about the finish being sort of really thick or heavy, so that's why I'm using a sponge just to sheer it out a little bit, but hopefully still get good enough coverage. Because the theme in the 90s was quite kind of grungy, I did read that there wasn't a lot of kind of correcting going on, particularly with dark circles as well. Quite often dark circles were left so you had that kind of bit of that shadow underneath your eyes to add to that grungy look. But my dark circles are pretty bad today, so I am going to put a bit of concealer on, but I'm just using my Fenty one because I don't want anything that's really full coverage to try and get that effect. So I'm just using my Fenty one and then just going to conceal any kind of blemishes as well. Yeah, you see how that concealer hasn't really covered that dark circle too much, so I guess that's kind of the look I'm going for. It's not hugely covered, you can still see a little bit of that darkness there, so hopefully it will look a little bit grungy. And because the look was quite matte, I am gonna powder my whole face. So the base is quite similar, I guess, to the 1950s base. Maybe not as thick and as heavy, but it's that matte finish that we want. Yeah, there's still a tinge of purple, purpley blue under my eyes. And the 90s is the first decade that I saw a mention of contouring. So I'm using my NYX Contour in Taupe, it's the only contour I've got, just to contour my forehead, my jawline, my nose. We're not going for a real sculpted, chiseled look that we saw in 2010s. but we are just going to put some contouring on the face. Now I think a contour stick would be easier for this, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to use my NYX Contour powder in Taupe. And put some under my jawline as well. Under my jawline, under my chin. And then just a bit either side of my nose. I'm then going to use my Clarins bronzer because the bronzers that they used in the 90s were quite matte, and this is the only matte bronzer that I have. So this is the one that I'm going to use. So all the colours in the 90s were very matte. It wasn't until we got into like the 2000s where we looked at those kind of frosted shimmery sort of finishes. I'm still undecided what I want to do with this bronzer. I think at some point I am going to get rid of it. It's in my project pan and I'm just getting really frustrated with it, but I keep persevering, but one day I am just going to be like, no, I'm done with it, and then get rid. Now blush shades were quite neutral. Now I don't really have a neutral blusher, but I am going to dip into two of my Laura Geller blushes here. So this one is a bit pinky terracotta-y and this one is a bit more peachy, so I'm going to use a little bit of the both of them. I couldn't really find any information on placement of blusher, but I think I'm just going to try to kind of keep it to my cheekbones. I think the main kind of focus on the cheeks in the 90s was that bronzer and that contour, so I don't think I'm going to do too much for blush. That might be enough, but once I've done the eyes, if I change my mind, I can put a bit more on. A bit too much on that side. Just go over it with my sponge a little bit, take away some of that pigment. Alright, moving on to eyes then, just going to prime with my Urban Decay eyeshadow primer, which is definitely running out. I'm having to really kind of scrape the tube to get enough product out. And then just using some of my MAC Blank Type, which is also in my project pan and is not going down. Just going to use some of that then to set the primer potion and to just give a bit of a base for the other colours to go on top. Okay, I'm going to take the shade Iced Coffee in my Soph Revolution palette. Just putting that on the lid. So with the eyes, it's going to be very brown, very kind of muted, earthy tones, a bit kind of grungy. Then I'm just taking some of the shade Charcoal Brown from my MAC palette, just to give this more of a muddy, sort of mid-toned brown look. With the 90s you don't want anything too warm, it was all very kind of like cool toned, cool, neutral. And because the eyeshadow looks were quite kind of grungy, you didn't really have to be too precise. There were no kind of like cut creases, no kind of intricate eye looks. It was just that kind of couple of tones of brown on the eye, smudge it in a bit, make it look a bit lived in, a bit kind of like cool girl, grungy-esque. Just going to run that same colour under my eye. I'm not going to use a smaller brush because that will make it too precise and not grungy enough. So a bigger brush, smudge that out. And then just doing some brown eyeliner. This is by Mally and this is in the shade Walnut, but I just want like a plain brown, just to smudge that out as well. You can use a black, liquid black if you want, but I just like that kind of messiness, that grunginess with a brown. Helps to keep everything all kind of neutral and in the same kind of colour palette. Then gonna smudge that out with an angled eyeshadow brush. I'm gonna wing that out a little bit as well, just so you've not got like a dead straight line. I'm gonna put a little bit on my outer corners underneath, and again just gonna smudge that out a bit. Might be easier actually to just use your finger, gives that real smudged look. So that kind of raccoon, heavily black eye-lined eye of the 80s, which was also quite popular, that did kind of come into the 90s a little bit, but it was more earthy. Just going to curl my lashes for some mascara. A mascara was worn on both the upper and lower lashes. I couldn't really find a mention of false lashes. I suppose you could wear them, but I don't think it was anything dramatic, so it was nothing like the 60s massive Bambi doe-eyed effect. I have just smudged it, I will clear it up. So I'm using my Collection Lash Surge mascara. Alright, mascara done, and I just put a bit of mug cake just in the socket because I wanted to make this a little bit darker. Alright, eyebrows next. I'm going to use Cabral by Benefit, and this is the first time I've actually used it. Now, brow pomades were quite popular in the 90s. Now, brows in the 90s were left kind of quite natural or bushy, or it was the complete opposite and you had the overplucked pencil thin brows. I'm not doing that. I'm not touching my brows for this video. I am actually having my brows waxed next week, so they are a mess, I'm aware, but they're being waxed, so I'm not going to touch them. So I'm just going to go with the whole kind of bushy look. So brows were quite dark in the 90s. That was quite easy to use, that brow, but I'm now just going to go through them with just a bit of a comb and then a little bit of pencil just to add a bit more definition, and that was also kind of suggested when I did my research as well. So using Precisely My Brow by Benefit, also in the shade 3, just filling in any kind of sparseness. Wow, my brows really do need a wax. And there's no mention of highlighter that I could find, so I am just going to leave my face highlighter free because everything is fairly matte. I don't want to be adding shimmer onto my face. So I think we've just got the lips left to do, so I'm going to take my Oak lip liner by MAC and line my lips with this and then smudge it in a little bit, because the trend was to get a kind of ombre effect, so a darker lip line and a lighter lip. And then just taking a bit of Whirl by MAC, just around the outside, because Whirl on me is a bit of a dark, neutral, cool brown, and that is what you want, but I'm just keeping it to the outside. Alright, there we go, that is the finished look. So with the lips I just put a little bit of Laneige lip balm in the middle and a bit of concealer to get more of an ombre look, because Whirl and the liner I was using were quite similar. Ideally with your 90s lips you want more of a contrast, so you want a really dark lip liner and then a much lighter lipstick, but I didn't have that massive contrast, so that bit of concealer in the middle hopefully has just made it look more grungy, more of that 90s contrasting lip. And then I've added on a choker as well, because chokers were massive in the 1990s and I actually remember wearing them in the 90s as well. So there we go then, what do you guys think? What do you think of this makeup? I quite like it, I quite like this grungy look, and I think with my hair being cut short as well, this kind of adds to the look. It's very kind of dishevelled, a bit messy, like I keep saying, it's quite grungy, quite kind of cool girl look as well. I quite like this one. So the 70s is still my favourite. I think this one kind of ties with the 80s. I think I very much like the browns in this look. I wouldn't do it exactly how I've done it here, so I wouldn't really ever do an ombre lip. I like it on other people, but just not really on me. And I would maybe put a little bit of a lighter shade on the eyes or a little bit of a shimmer. But yeah, I quite kind of like how this look has come together, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. So I hope you enjoyed watching that video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. I do have the 2000 ones coming soon as well, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. If you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you would as well. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again soon in my next video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.